Okay, so the first step in any color grading workflow is color correction. Color correction is where you're going to take your footage straight out of camera and just start correcting it. Basically just fixing any maybe minor issues that you had while shooting. Maybe some things weren't quite the right color. Maybe you had some exposure issues, de-logging your footage, just fixing little inconsistencies that might have happened while shooting, and just getting your footage all set up and ready to color grade and get into the actual creative part of the process. So I've got a clip here that is in log, and this is from a commercial that I DP'd. And basically I'm going to go through the color correction process with you and show you how it works. So the first thing that we need to do is de-log this footage. That basically means bringing it back from a log profile, which as you can see looks really flat and desaturated, which a lot of your consumer and prosumer and even professional cameras will shoot in log. And so if you're shooting in log, you'll need to de-log your footage first. If you're not shooting in log, you don't need to worry about that. If it's in log, we basically just need to add back the contrast and the saturation that we lost from having it in log. So we can do that over here in our basic correction panel. And I'm going to just start going through and adjusting some of these things. So for example, our contrast, we may need to bring that up. And then our saturation, we can increase as well to a normal level. And then I might adjust maybe some of the shadows need to be a little bit darker and the whites need to come up a little bit. So you can kind of adjust shadows, highlights, whites, blacks, everything here to get it to about the right level, about where you want it. Now up here above all of our exposure corrections, we also have a white balance correction. So that's our temperature and tint. So temperature is going to control how warm or cool the image is. Tint is going to control how green or magenta the image is. Now, the method that I like to use to get these right is what I call the back and forth technique. And that basically means just moving your sliders back and forth until it feels right. So what I'll do is I'll take my slider and go really far to the right and notice how that's way too warm. And then I'll come really back far to the left and notice how it's way too cool. And then I'll just keep bouncing back and forth between too warm, too cool, too warm, too cool, too warm, too cool, and just make it smaller and smaller and smaller until I land on a setting about right there. Okay, so that's a natural looking color. And then I'll do the same thing with the tint. So that's too magenta, that's too green. We'll just kind of go back and forth between magenta and green until we settle on a color that looks natural. And you'll notice that I landed at about 6.1. So that's giving us a pretty well corrected image. Now, another way you can do this is on your white balance correction here, you should have an eyedropper tool that you can use to select something in the scene that is white. And if you do that, it will automatically do the white balance for you. So in this scene, the sweater that the girl is wearing here is kind of white. It's pretty close. It's kind of like an off-white, a little bit more creamy color than white, but we're going to use that and just kind of adjust from there and see what we get. So if I click on the color dropper tool and then I just click anywhere on her jacket, it's going to give me a color correction. Now you'll notice that it went a little bit cooler than what I did when I was doing my adjustments. That's because the jacket is not perfectly white. So if you want to be technical about this and get it really accurate, you'll want to shoot with a white card. You can put a white card in front of the camera before you start shooting. And then when you come into your color grade, you can just click on that white card and it'll give you your white balance automatically. Now, since it gave me a little bit cooler image, since that's kind of a cream colored shirt, I'll just adjust that warmth back a little bit. And then now we've got a nicely color corrected image. Now, the easiest way to do de-logging if you are shooting in log is to use a LUT. Now we'll talk about LUTs in another video, so I'm not going to go into it right now. However, you'll notice here at the top of the basic correction panel, we do have an input LUT option. Basically, every camera manufacturer creates log profiles that you can use and LUTs that you can use to convert those log profiles back to a standard color format. So if you go online and Google your camera and look for a log conversion LUT to Rec 709, for example, you should be able to find one that will de-log the footage for you automatically. So if I reset all of these settings and I choose one, I don't have one specifically for my camera, but I'll just choose kind of one of the default ones from like an Arri camera, for example. This is, Alexa's default log C to Rec 709. It's a conversion LUT. If I add that on, you notice that it brings back the contrast and the saturation automatically, and then I don't have to do all these other adjustments. I can just kind of adjust my colors and my image from there. Now, if you're shooting on a cinema camera or something that shoots in RAW, you're going to have a little bit of a different workflow since those cameras record all of that data as metadata and you can change it in your camera. Then you don't have to really worry about adding a LUT onto it. So let me go ahead and delete this LUT and reset everything that we did here. In that case, what we would do is you'd go back to the master effect controls for that clip and change the gamma curve from log to gamma. That's going to give you back the normal gamma curve that was meant to be the way it was when you shot it. Then from there, you can go back into your color panel and start making adjustments to the image to get it exactly how you want. So you may want to adjust the color temperature or the tint a little bit to get the color that you want. And then you can do the same thing for your highlights and shadows, whites and blacks, and just keep adjusting the image until you get it right where you like it. All right, so that is the color correction process. Again, this is the first thing you want to do. You want to do this on every single clip in your timeline to make sure that they're all corrected and make sure that they're all consistent as well. So for example, if you're working on an interview that has 2 different cameras, you want to make sure that those cameras are matched and they look good together. Or let's say you're working on a commercial and each scene has a few different clips. You want to take all of the shots from that scene and match them together so that they're similar. And then when you go into the color grading process and you start getting creative with it, it'll translate a lot easier from clip to clip. So there you go. If you have questions about that, feel free to let me know. If not, let's go ahead and move on to the next video.